Special, I think Brian and Amy and Fawad and Ahmad, why don't you guys all come up for our panel? I owe a debt of gratitude really to Amy and to Brian, because once Fawad and Ahmad had said yes, Amy and Brian really paved the way for us to say yes. Brian Winston, David Mustin from the Dearborn Public Schools were nice enough to come by as well. We thank them for their support. I know David and the board members hadn't seen some of the footage in here yet, but hopefully you guys like the film. So we appreciate their support and also the people over at Dearborn High. It's funny, there was this big rivalry that everyone's worried about between Dearborn and Fordson. And what we found when we shot was there's a rivalry among the coaches and the staffs and things like that, but it's a pretty friendly rivalry. And the people at Dearborn High, when we told them we're doing a movie called Fordson, we're like, oh wow, that's interesting. But they opened their doors to us for our filming. We got on the field, we interviewed their players. So the entire community was really absolutely phenomenal. Usher was our producer on the film. Busma, is Busma here? Can she please stand? Stand up, Busma. So Busma always stays in the background during these things, but please give her a round of applause. She did, all those great moments that you see with the moms and the sisters and stuff. Busma did all those interviews, and usually when you see a Muslim woman in a headscarf, you think of someone yelling and screaming in the Middle East as the image. And Busma's the one who actually talked to them and brought them to life in this film in a way that I don't think anyone's ever done. All the footage you saw in the movie, all the historical stuff she tracked down. So she always stays in the background, but I want to give her a special congratulations and thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to reintroduce everybody that's on the panel. Rashid Ghazi is our director and executive producer. Amy Blackburn was with the school board. Fawad Zaban is our coach. Brian Islam is our alumni. And Imad Fadlallah was the principal at the school. So I'm going to start real quick with actually I'll ask you, since you're closest to me, I can hand the mic off. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges you faced. This was a story that Rashid wanted to tell for a long time. There was, sort of a little bit of trepidation. A lot of media's come into Dearborn over the last couple of years, last 10 years or so. And there's a little bit of trepidation to let strangers like us in. Talk about sort of what it was about what we were pitching to you that convinced you that maybe this is a story that you were going to let us tell.
First, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I want to thank Rashid, Usher, and Basma. I worked very closely with them for the past couple of years in making this movie, and I know for a fact, with a couple minor changes, they could have twisted things around and made a lot of money selling this movie. But they kept their passion, and they kept their focus on creating the real story, the true story of the Muslims and the Arab Americans. So I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. Now, as far as the question that he asked, I can go rounds and rounds and rounds. Especially Basma asked me all the hard questions, and she kept pushing me to get the answers, and I believe she did. But what you've seen is the modified version of the things that have happened. When I saw the movie today, I was surprised that even at the other side of town, the football team recited the Fatiha, which is the verse from the Quran. And I'm surprised because they can do that and they're not questioned, but if anything happens at Fordson, we're always questioned. I'll give you an example. One time, the superintendent and I were standing at the sideline, and the Fordson band played the national anthem. And we went along with the game and everything, and the next morning the superintendent gets an email. How come Fordson does not play the national anthem? Now, luckily the superintendent was there, and he told him, I heard it, I was there. So we were always questioned about things like that. Another quick story I can tell you, the pulley on the flag broke down. And the flag is right outside my office. So I looked outside my office and I didn't see the flag for 2-3 days. So I called the building engineer, Frank, how come the flag is not flying? Well, the pulley broke down and I need a special lift. We have like a 40-foot pole in front of the building. I need a special lift to replace the pulley. I said, Frank, please, hurry up. I waited 2-3 days and the flag's still not there. Then the phone calls and the emails started to fly. The Arab principal took the US flag from in front of the building. So I had to call the director of grounds. He ordered the pulley, expedited the shipping, and got the flag back up. So those are the kind of challenges that you face every single day. Your decisions are always questioned. Why did he make that decision? Fordson High School is a public high school like any high school USA. We have the same problems that you face in any high school. We have the same events, the same issues that takes place in every high school in America. But it is magnified, especially after September 11th.
Thank you. Brian, you've lived in this community your whole life. You went to Fordson in the 90s. You played football there. How has the community changed? How has Fordson changed? How has football changed? How do you think this country's changed? And how do you think it's sort of impacted this community over the last 10 or 11 years in particular?
Well, first of all, I too want to thank Usher, Basma, and Rashid, who did a wonderful job putting this thing together. School board was very instrumental. Superintendent and everybody got on board. It was really great to see this piece come together, and Rashid and his group need to be commended. You know, I think football or anything, sports transcends race. No matter what color you are, what religion you are, when you look through the sporting eyes, when everybody on that field have the same uniform, and you can relay a message through sports, I think it's one of the best ways to tell a story, because it just absolutely transcends race. You know, if you think about Hakeem Olajuwon, who was a Muslim basketball player down in Houston, all pro, all world, won championships, will go down as one of the greatest players in the world. Very few people ever mentioned that he was Muslim. He built mosques in Houston. He did a lot of things, but nobody ever looked at him as that Muslim. He was Hakeem Olajuwon, the respect he had. So football in this community is very big for that reason. I think the passion for football in this community has doubled and tripled now with this next generation, because our parents never played the game. Now you're seeing these group of parents, their kid, they played, they understand football, and now you're seeing this game become a lot more magnified in this community. You're seeing this East End community as well as the West End community. You know, 50% of the kids at Dearborn High come from the East End and go to West Dearborn that a lot of people don't really understand. There used to be 4 or 5 feeder schools in the Fordson, now there's 1.5 or 2, but football will always be king at Fordson. Football will always be a sport in which everybody looks at and can identify with us, and I think that was Rashid's message of trying to show a Muslim story through the eyes of football.
Coach Zaban, I wanted to ask you specifically about your halftime speech. I thought it was very poignant. If you looked at it and you listened to it, it almost, you know, people talk about football being a metaphor for life, but it seemed like what was going on in that game was a metaphor for what's going on with Muslims and Arab Americans within this country. Whereas, you know, it's one thing to fight for your dream, but it's another to defeat yourself. And, you know, you sort of, in that speech, you know, it was a metaphor for everything that's going on. Was that something that struck you as well in terms of how Muslims are perceived in this country and sort of the game of football and how you sort of have to come back from letting yourself take over and destroy yourself, without anybody giving any help?
Well, before I begin, I once again I want to thank the crew for the great job that they did, and especially my players and their families, and you know, everybody else that was involved in the project, the Dearborn Public Schools, and you know, the board members. Well, to be quite honest with you, at that time I wasn't thinking other than the game. You know, we're out there and we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, and you know, we're just getting penalty after penalty. So my speech was basically about the game. But in all honesty, when I coach, and the reason I coach is for the reasons that you're speaking about, is to teach our kids to do right from wrong, and to be better people and better citizens. And is it because we're Arab Americans? Well, to be quite honest with you, this is all I know. You know I went away to school and I got educated and stuff, but this is the community that I know, and this is where I'm from. So I don't know really, you know, I don't think of the bigger picture, and you know, this is who we are. We're playing football just like any high school kids play football. I coach just like any coach that coaches football coaches. So no, I don't think about those things. But in my message through coaching is I am trying to teach them to do right from wrong, and hopefully these little lessons or these little speeches that we speak about, they can take that and try to use that somewhere in life. Examples of what? What do you want to know? Well, I mean, some of the things that we do are some community service. You know, we take our football team once a year and we do community service. We've done projects in the city of Dearborn. We've went to Hemlock Park and we've cleaned up the pool area. We painted the fences. We planted flowers. Looking at these big football players planting flowers is, so actually you have to teach them how to do that. So we've gone and we've did Habitat for Humanity, where we've gone and actually had a hand in building homes for some of the not so fortunate, and we did some landscaping there, which was grueling work, and the kids did a terrific job. So basically, it's just trying to teach them, the life skills that we all, have experienced, and just trying to pass that along to the young, in our, just make them better people, basically.
Amy, I want to ask you real quick. Brian says in the film that he doesn't envy the position of the administrators. You've got a tough job to do. You've got to understand a lot of sort of the intricacies of this community and sort of their needs. Talk a little bit about how you look at the challenges that you face as a school district, and how you meet those challenges, and what sort of things you've learned that you would have never thought you would have learned from this community.
Wow, all that in a short period of time. The film is excellent, and it gives a great perspective, but there is a perspective that you don't see, and I think that we in Dearborn are fortunate because our students and our kids can feel safe and in their home environment, but we have a lot of conflict here too. The conflict that you see across the country happens in our own city. We have the same types of the hate mail that you saw that I had received. Those weren't necessarily from people in other parts of the country. One of those in particular was from a citizen in our community. So these kids experience a lot, and it's difficult being on the school board because up until this last year we have this large contingent of Arab American students and no role model on the school board for those students to look up to, for those parents to go to, and so they didn't have an outlet or a place to go to say, wait a second, and advocate for their children, and trying to do those things on the football field, through the district, in the classroom. But it's different having somebody in a political arena, and so I didn't grow up in Dearborn. I grew up in a very white community. I think we had one black student where I grew up, and when I got to middle school, we had 3 Filipino students. So I moved to Dearborn after I got married and had children, and so it was quite an experience for me, quite a learning experience. And I guess I lived in my own little world too and didn't realize some of the hatred that some of these students face. I didn't know that existed until I moved here. And so I kind of see some of it through their eyes as well when the one student says, it's hate and it's real hate. There are times that we feel that way, and as a board it's frustrating, as a board member it's frustrating, and when you're trying to do what's right and trying to explain to people why, for example, taking the Eid off, and it seems to me very logical. Why would you take the Eid off? Because the students aren't there. You can't teach kids that aren't in classrooms, but it's such a political issue, and you can go up the road 15 miles to Southfield and they have Jewish holidays off, and it's never discussed. It's not a question, it's not an issue, but in our world today, we still get questioned every single year. Why do we cater to the Arab and Muslims? And it's not about catering to a religion or an ethnic group. It's about catering to your customers. Our community is our customer. Our students are our customers. And it's a shame that it has to come down to money, and that's exactly what happened years ago. It came down to money. We didn't get the money, so we had to take the day off. You know, we serve halal meat in some of our schools. The reason for that is money. Students stopped eating lunch. They stopped eating, our lunch program started to go downhill because the students weren't buying lunch. And so they realized that if we served halal meat, that we could continue the lunch program in some of those schools. And so that's what started the process of serving halal meat in some of our schools. So unfortunately, it comes down to economics. And we now have the numbers in the schools. And so while it might seem like everybody gets along and everything's happy, we have the same challenges that they have across the country.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Rashid, because you first-time director and had to tackle a lot of issues in this film. I mean, it's a very complex sort of, you know, state that our country is going into, and this really tried to tackle a lot of those issues, and then also tell the story of football and of these families and of these students and of this community. I know as the producer that we shot over 70 hours of material. How difficult was it for you to sort of find this story, and a lot had to be cut out just to make it fit within the constraints of a 90-minute film? If you think about it, 70 hours down to 90 minutes is pretty impressive. So talk a little bit about the challenges from a production aspect of that.
I think, well, one, Usher and Busma had a lot to do with it. I've got a sports background. Usher was actually the youngest bureau chief in CNN history, and he and his wife was his producer. They went out to Pakistan right after 9/11 and covered President Musharraf and the things happening with the Taliban and in Pakistan for 3 or 4 years. So we had a sports background with me, a news background with them. I think the reason I gravitated towards the story, so it's, well, how do you know what to ask? Well, we knew coming in that we had a coach who spoke well. We had met with Ahmad. We had a principal who spoke well. So we knew we had fasting and football. We knew we had how 9/11 impacted this community a little differently. We knew we had the Arabic prayer on the football field. We knew we had this whole interest in kind of how did all these Arabs come into this country. And then we actually got very lucky in that we wanted to do the movie back in 2003. It took us about 6 years to get permission. In 2003, I had no money to shoot the movie, so if we had gotten permission, I don't know how it would have gotten done. But luckily enough, we were able to come out, and our first day of filming was 9/11. And we were able to include the Dearborn rivalry game as part of our filming as well, which really gave the movie a lot of credence in terms of the town and the community. So we knew we had those themes. So we kind of started with that. Fawad helped us find the guys who were all great, and then we just started exploring and talking, asking questions. So we'd ask questions about no excuses. How about 9/11? How did that impact you? And then we came here, Amy was like, talk to Abid Hamoud, talk to Sama Siblani. I think, Usher, you read a quote by Professor Stockton, so we tracked him down. We read a quote by Ron Amon in a book. Literally on the way here, it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and Busma highlighted his name, and we tracked him down here, so I called him up and did an interview. So as we got here, the community pointed us to other people, and the story progressed. Big Joe, who unfortunately is not here tonight, he's got a poker night for Big Joe. True story, because I called him about an hour ago. So
Comes down to economics.
but Big Joe was sitting on the railing there, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What are you doing?" So we started talking to Big Joe, and as we went back and looked at the footage, it was so compelling. We came back and actually wanted to spend the day with him, and it was funny. We came back, and there was a flood, so he couldn't make it out here. But I saw Coach Bazzi running around the track, and he was running wind sprints like crazy, working out. And I'm like, we've got a crew here. It's about $2,000 for the day. Coach Bazzi's sitting right there, so we grabbed Coach Bazzi. He was kind enough to kind of cancel his entire day. And that's all of his interviews were actually done about a month and a half, 2 months afterwards. And so we included him. So we came back and did follow-up interviews. Our writer Ruth Lightman actually saw Ahmad's, was really compelled by what Ahmad had to say through all of his tapes. And so we were going to come back and shoot graduation and to pick up interviews with all the kids. And she said, hey, you know what? Tape graduation. Who knows what he's going to say? And his speech ended up being very poignant to the point we could actually use it to kind of conclude our story. So those kinds of things happened. The other message I gave our team was, this is not the usual suspects. So we've got some really good footage, got some great content, got great sound bites. We don't need to overly complicate the story. Let's not try to create, this Academy Award-winning movie. And we've got a lot of great content, a lot of great quotes. Let's make it kind of simple. And that's why we started on a Friday. We ended on a Friday. We also knew, if you look at who the target for this movie was, my target, I was in Little Rock, Arkansas at a film festival yesterday. I'm going to Oklahoma for a film festival on Friday, and they're like, "Who's your target audience for this?" And I was in Little Rock. I'm like, "You, the SEC football fan." And literally, the fans in the Southeastern Conference are the people that I wanted to target. So I went after the really 18 to 34, 18 to 49-year-old male college football fan, because I thought, really, if we can convince that group of people to take a look at this movie and become educated, I think it'll make our country a better place to be, and it'll help move that along. And that's why I told coaches, if you guys weren't so crazy about football and so serious about football, I wouldn't have done the movie. And in part, not because the story doesn't need to be told, but because them being so crazy about football, I televise all of ESPN's high school football games. It's one of the things I do for a living. So I'm in small towns all across the country, and more than baseball or the NFL or even college football, the one binding thing in this country is local towns and their love of their high school and their love of their football team. Because every kid can play. So my kid is, he wants to play for his high school football team in the local area. Ultimately, he wants to play for the Bears as well, but the high school team's the first. And so that love and that passion that I saw here was unusual, and so we kept the story simple, and we also had a lot of things to introduce. My parents founded an organization called ICRA 30 years ago, and they write most of the Muslim textbooks used in full-time and part-time schools. Did a lot of work with the U.S. government. They redesigned the entire educational curriculum for the government of Singapore for all their madrasas to kind of make it a little more universal. And my dad said, we've been teaching people for 30 years about Islam. In an hour and a half, you explain some very basic things to people. Ramadan, Eid, fasting, iftar, Surah Fatiha. And so we knew we had those things to tackle, so we tried to keep it pretty simple because there's a lot to take in that movie. I think we're going to throw it to questions now, if you guys have questions.
Does anybody in the audience have a question for anybody on the panel? Wow. Everybody's tired and hungry, I guess. Yeah.
I'd just like to ask Rasha, what kind of, I don't know if it's been shown anyplace else in the country yet. If it has, what kind of reaction have you gotten from the non-Muslim, non-Arab community?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we have over 4,200 fans on Facebook. So go to Facebook, Fordson the Movie, become a fan if you're all on Facebook. And you can actually read reviews. So we've gotten a really good response. The funny thing is, this whole film festival thing's a little crazy, because you've got companies like Sony and these large companies creating independent films. So we've been accepted. We haven't gotten to Sundance, but we got in a film festival called Slamdance, which runs opposite Sundance. And in Slamdance,
very special. And any of your embassies who are interested in screening this movie, you're certainly welcome to do so. And Rashid and I have talked about it, and simply we'll arrange for a screening at your embassy, and Rashid can come, or Usher, or perhaps one of the people in the film as well. And I think it's an interesting lesson. I think you all appreciated it. You know, it's about more than American football, obviously. It's a parable, a metaphor, as we said before, a very unusual and a very powerful film. And I think it fits in very well with the theme of this conference about minorities and ethnic groups and their place in American society. And then, of course, as we talk today, and we'll be talking later on, some of the issues that you people face in your own countries. And beginning, of course, with the Dearborn experience, which will continue tomorrow. So let me, at this point, introduce Admiral Olson, the commander of U.S. Special Operations Command.
Sorry about that. I was just going to mention, we've got a 1-hour version that we've actually edited for our international distributor, that's Mercury Media out of the UK. So you can get my information from Stan if you're interested, but for example, we're talking to the BBC. In Japan, they've made us an offer. Israel's buying the movie. Holland, they called us up because of the whole Van Gogh situation that they had, so they thought it'd be a good movie. So a lot of countries are actually buying this movie as a 1-hour special. So if your nation is interested and you know the people, you can look up Mercury Media on the internet.org, or you can contact me through Stan.
Well, good evening. Thank you. It's again a pleasure to be with you, and thank you all for gathering. This is one of a series of these, and it is a powerful group that comes together. Attachés representing 68 countries is at the actual count for 3 days here. And we will have a lot of opportunity over the next couple of days to talk about a lot of things. But tonight is about this film and its power. It was a truly powerful story, extraordinarily well told. to all of us about why we are having this conference at this time in this place in Dearborn. The last one was in El Paso. We talked about border issues. The one before that was in Key West. We talked about a number of issues, including narcotics and the nexus between terrorism and criminality. This one clearly to talk about the assimilation of cultures in a place like Dearborn, which has had its struggles but has demonstrated much progress, and you can be very proud of that. So I certainly applaud the wisdom of the producer and director, the leadership of the principal and the school board, the passion of the coaches, but mostly I want to applaud the courage for taking the risk that the players and their families did by letting this crew into your homes, into your souls to a great degree, to tell this story that really is an important story to be told at this time. I hope that America takes time out to watch this film and to pay serious attention to it. It will be good for all of us to see this film much more broadly distributed. I would like to present token presentations to Rashid for your vision in producing this film. This is the Sovereign Challenge crystal. Hard for me to take it out and hold the microphone at the same time, but let me try. Okay. This, you can see it. It is with Rashid's name on it, and the Sovereign Challenge logo and the logo of the United States Special Operations Command. Thank you very much. And we do have 4 more crystals for the 4 football players. Oh, I'm sorry. We have one for Ashar as well.
I'm going to share this with my wife.
All right.
The partner in crime and
Great, thanks so much. And we do have 4 for the 4 football players who were featured so prominently in the film. No, you're fine where you are. Let's move some photographers over here. Can you do that? Come on, I have my picture taken with just you doing that. All right. All right, that's going to be my Christmas card this year. I talked about vision and courage and wisdom and leadership. I forgot to talk about talent.